Gamers, how do you feel when one of your favorite pieces of media reaches its natural conclusion? Well, this is something that I've been thinking about for a long time and for many different topics. The ending of a particular series may seem inevitable or completely impossible depending on which series you're looking at. But I've noticed various trends that happen pretty much every single time a modern pop cultural icon takes its last curtain call. Now, of course, behind me I have one of the biggest and most controversial of all, Attack on Titan, the final season. Now, I love Attack on Titan. I have been reading the manga and watching the anime since about 2013, 2014, and I had followed it on that journey ever since then. I kept up with every new anime episode. I kept up, not as closely, but I kept up with the physical manga volume releases, and then I eventually followed up with the monthly chapter releases when I finally caught up to the manga only a few months before its conclusion. And man, there's kind of nothing like what the anime community was like when Attack on Titan was first airing. It just seemed to break so many boundaries and be viewed by so many different people in and outside of the community. It was just such a huge pop cultural event. You felt like you were really a part of something. You felt like you were really there, watching it alongside thousands of other people every single week. And that is a really special feeling. Now, granted, the show did have its detractors, and I mean, every show does, and yeah, they were around since the beginning, but something odd happened. Well, it's not entirely odd, but of course, some people dropped off the series for various reasons over its run. But one thing that I noticed right at the end of its run is that people who were seemingly super on board for the storyline playing out, for some reason, heavily turning on and hating on the final few chapters. That being like 138 to 139, the last 3 chapters or so. And I just had no idea what the hell these people were talking about, because every single month, I was absolutely flabbergasted with what Isayama served up to me. And of course, I enjoyed the entire thing throughout its entire run. So this got me thinking, was the ending actually subpar or disappointing, or were people just mad for the sake of being mad? And I came to some interesting conclusions. So if you've been around this anime manga space for a bit, you might have seen this trend happen a few times. Every time a big, long-running series comes to an end, there is quite a lot of controversy. Whether it be something like Naruto or Bleach, the final chapter is always a very contentious one. People are throwing up their arms in anger, pulling out their pitchforks and torches. They want the author dead, honestly, and these people get pretty crazy online. And it's just so miraculous that this happens pretty much every time. Now, of course, I wasn't really around when Fullmetal Alchemist was reaching its conclusion, but I'm pretty sure that didn't happen with that series because it's widely known to be one of the best endings of all time. But I have a sneaking suspicion that in the few years, Attack on Titan's final episodes will also be regarded as such. I just feel like this series is such an incredible epic story that reached its natural conclusion and absolutely hit every mark during its 88 episode run. And granted, yeah, every story has its flaws. Of course, the aforementioned Fullmetal Alchemist was, of course, flawed. But what makes people so upset when a series ends? Well, take it with a grain of salt because I didn't really do any psychological analysis or really any research at all for this. So pretty much this is just what I've seen and what I've heard. So pretty much all anecdotal evidence. But I get the feeling that a lot of people during the run of a long-form series just build up this idea of it in their mind. They have this idea of where the characters are going to go, what they're going to act like, and how the series will ultimately conclude. And I think this is very detrimental to your viewing pleasure, because When I watch a show, I typically think of the writers and directors as magicians. They're trying to play a magic trick on me. They're trying to put the wool over my eyes and make sure that I don't see extensive foreshadowing that's hidden in plain sight. Isayama was very good at this. They are, of course, the master of the story. They can intentionally mislead the audience. They can show you big reveals exactly when they want to. And they are trying their best to tell you the story the way they want to tell it, the way they want you to see it and experience it. So I feel like it's almost a disservice to the extremely talented people making these things when a lot of people just think that their version that they've built up in their head is so much better. I think we've seen this with tons of series, especially recently. Arcane Season 2 and the final chapters of Jujutsu Kaisen are big standouts to me because those are series that when I watched/read them, I really didn't have any big problems of my own. Of course, Arcane had a lot of pacing issues, and JJK is kind of perfect. I don't know, I love JJK. Yeah, so the series themselves, they might have minor issues, but my overall experience was amazing because I simply just saw what the author was trying to show me, and I extrapolated from that what I could. I didn't have any big machinations of where Vi or Jinx or Yuji or Gojo were going as characters. I just kind of read along or watched along each week, each episode, each chapter. And I totally enjoyed myself with both of those series. But for some reason, there was a huge media crash out on social media. They completely went crazy over these endings. Now, JJK, I don't really know what people were saying. I just remember people absolutely dooming on the last few arcs, which in my opinion are some of the best. I think the backlash to Arcane Season 2 is a bit more understandable. You know, the show used to be very focused, and then Season 2 covered a lot of area in a very short span of time, and it was very unfocused. It was doing a little thing here and a little thing there, and it wasn't necessarily all wrapped together as well by the time you got to the conclusion. Now, I thought the conclusion rightfully served every character, gave you the arcs that you were looking for, and concluded the story well. Granted, some caveats, but a lot of people just thought it was absolutely horrible. And JJK has always been strong character moments and themes-driven storytelling through the guise of extensive, almost excessive at times, shonen battle sequences. And it was completely that until the very end. But somehow a lot of viewers and readers feel betrayed. Now, I can't exactly put you in their shoes and tell you why they might feel these things about those certain series because, frankly, I didn't have those opinions. So I can listen to a well-constructed argument, but that's not necessarily the thing that you're gonna see on Twitter right after the final episode ends or the last chapter is published. I don't know, maybe people are just looking forward to these things so much that when they are vaguely disappointing, they just completely lose it and want to take it out on either the world at large, the people making the show, or whatever else. Now, of course, there are some endings that are definitely less than stellar, and no one's forcing you to enjoy these things. I just think it's important to talk about them in a more nuanced manner than just saying, oh, the ending was bad, therefore the entire show has been ruined. Now, I don't even think that is a completely invalid opinion all of the time. I think certain people saying that Game of Thrones Season 8 or Star Wars Episode 9 ruined a lot of the previous works in that series for them, that's fine. And honestly, I find that pretty sad. I haven't watched Season 8 of Game of Thrones, but Star Wars Episode 9 might be the worst movie ever made. So yeah, a bad ending can heavily tank a series, but also it depends on public perception and culture of the time. Like, nowadays, Harry Potter's not very well liked with the think brain media types like me. Well, although it's still absurdly popular with the masses, and it's still, you know, a pretty decent series in its own right. I think that a lot of people have turned on the ending of the series in retrospect. Pretty much the opposite of the other series I mentioned, where I'm fairly certain that, in retrospect, people are going to realize that those endings were much better than they gave them credit for initially. With the Deathly Hallows, however, I think that book and those two movies subsequently have a lot of issues that kind of went unnoticed at the time. Now, I'm sure we're all way older than the first time we saw the Deathly Hallows, but looking back on it, it just doesn't hold the same weight as certain other fantastic endings like Fullmetal Alchemist and classics like Lord of the Rings. But honestly, that's okay. I mean, the book is over 15 years old at this point, so what's the point of having a media crash out about that? We can just talk about how terrible of a person J.K. Rowling is instead. Even if an ending is disappointing, like, and the Deathly Hallows can be a fairly disappointing book, but overall, the climax, the arc the characters go on is pretty satisfying, and it feels as well as it should, being the built-up of the past other books in the series. Granted, that's a long series. That's 7 books right there. That's too many. But you know, for what it's worth, it's not worth getting too upset about it. And really, all this is to say is have more perspective, be a little more patient, and don't think that you have all the answers. Because you definitely don't, I definitely don't. Only the author can tell you what's really gonna happen next. On a side note, I wanna say what a fond farewell to Attack on Titan. Now, I have in my hand the final Blu-ray set of Attack on Titan, but I haven't watched this yet. I instead went to the theater, took a trip to the cinema to watch exactly this in movie format. This is a compilation disc of 2 TV specials that aired over the course of 2023, but later in 2024, they released a film version, and now in February 2025, they finally brought that to North America. So I saw it, and man, it was fantastic. I loved seeing everything on the big screen. It definitely, the gargantuan scale of that finale is perfectly suited for the big screen. And it really was an emotional marathon. It's quite an emotionally exhausting band of episodes. It is just, oof, there's a lot of stuff going down in that. But really, the most important and impactful thing for me seeing the film version of it, they did add some little bits of new footage here and there, but at the very end, they finally did something that I've been waiting for them to do for so many years. They finally fully adapted and animated one of the extra funny little Attack on High School cast segments from the manga volumes. Finally, I've been waiting for this for so long. We finally get the modern day interpretation of Eren, Armin, and Mikasa, and a few other cameo characters as well. And they made it canon, like the whole, I could do a whole other video about symbolism in Attack on Titan because I'm absolutely obsessed with the symbolism in this series. But the tree that the whole series starts with Eren sleeping under it, and then it ends with that. You've seen it. They show the tree. They show the tree in the modern day with the modern Eren, Armin, and Mikasa, and so that insinuates that this is like a canon thing. They've been like reincarnated or something, and now they're living their funny Attack on High School cast lives. And Marco still fucking died. And with this, they took the chance to expand a little bit upon what was said in that final edition of Attack on High School casts. And it's essentially a farewell to Attack on Titan. It's a farewell to the 10-odd years of its airing, and a thank you to everyone who has spent those 10 years following alongside. I think it's a great privilege to be able to see something from beginning to end and really get the most out of all aspects of it. You know, when big series like the Trails series or Xenoblade or, you know, any other, or Yakuza, any other series with an ongoing storyline that may just conclude at some point, I'm sure those endings are going to bring controversy with them. But to be there and see it and really just take everything in, go from beginning to end, experience all that content through all those years, it's really a special feeling. And I'm especially glad that I was lucky enough to be right there at ground zero for Attack on Titan. See it explode, see it develop, and ultimately see it end. And I'm really glad with where it ended up. And a little side note, but I wonder if there's some series out there that will just legitimately never end. Like, will Star Wars ever truly end? I mean, it's been 40 years. They're not stopping. Something like Resident Evil, a series that's basically been going fairly strong with numbered entries since the late 90s. And of course they've remade a lot of stuff, but the continuity has stayed inconsistent, but they try. And they keep making new entries, so will they really end the continuity of Resident Evil? Of course, the Trail series is built from the ground up to have an ending. They're clearly going to an ending. I think even the creator, the runner of that series, said that they were like 80% complete after the most recent game. And of course, games with big arcs like Xenoblade. Of course, we have the Xenoblade trilogy, and Xenoblade 3 truly feels like an ending to that trilogy, but there's gonna be more games. And I mean, Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts actually will end. We have that confirmed. Even though that Kingdom Hearts 4 is going to be the beginning of an entirely new arc for the series, which the previous arc concluded in 3, so that is a conclusion. And it also was a conclusion wrought with controversy. It'll just be so surreal to see a series like that truly reach a definitive ending. And I mean, a lot of series, especially game series, are kind of meant to go forever. So what do you do when there's no ending in sight? Or no ending at all? Well, speaking of no ending in sight, I don't really want to talk about One Piece in this video, but I'll do it a little bit. So One Piece, obviously, it's long as hell. Frankly, I think it's too long. I think that's its greatest flaw, but I am definitely not the guy. I'm not the big opinion man about One Piece. That's just my opinion. I'm sure tons of people will disagree with me. But One Piece will end one day, and yeah, there's no way that ending won't be controversial. But does it even need to end? Okay, here's the thing. Now, a series could run its course, a series could just keep going on forever and ever, and people will just drop off, or a series can keep making new installments, and, you know, fans of the previous installments will just stick with those. There's very different ways that this can occur. Very different ways that these sorts of things can play out. Let's say that One Piece doesn't end. Let's say One Piece just keeps going. I think if you like One Piece, which personally I've fallen off of One Piece in the past few years, but if you like it, I think it's best to just appreciate the arcs and the stories that are there and not worry about the ending too much. Because, I mean, depending on who you are, you're probably not even gonna like the ending. But also, some things could just be left entirely unfinished. Of course, we've seen authors pass away and other people take on their work, but we've seen a bunch of other authors pass away or quit working, and their work just goes unfinished. Now, I'm someone who doesn't really believe that a story needs to be completed or conclusive to still be great. I think there are tons of stories that are pretty much incomplete that still, honestly, tell a great tale. And there's even certain complications to this, like the second wave of Final Fantasy 15 DLC that never happened. Yes, the game had a conclusive ending, but they were going to make an addendum and almost an alternate universe to that ending, and I'm really interested to see what that would have been. Granted, pretty sure the contents of the Final Fantasy 15 novel cover that, and that is something I definitely want to read in the near future. But I can't really speak on it because I honestly don't know anything more about it. And of course with these long-running video game series that tend to hand off involvement as they keep going on and on and on, I suppose that's simpler because they're individual games rather than just episodes or seasons. I don't know. In the end, the ending is always an extremely important and impactful moment in any story, but it might not be the most important. It might not be the most impactful. And that's honestly fine. Whether there is an ending or not, a work of fiction is much more than just how it leaves off. And I think it's much more important to focus on the work as a whole than simply how it concluded. So that's just my sense and my take on the whole ending paradox. Well, that's about all I have to say for today. Peace.